This is Montgomery Mosaic on 1450 WOL, WPRS, HD2, and worldwide on WOLDCnews.com. Montgomery Mosaic features topics of interest to Montgomery County residents, businesses, and visitors. Here now is your host, Deborah Milo.
And good morning, everyone. No, this is not Deborah Milo, but happy Wednesday. I'm your host, Oheni Japan, filling in for Deborah Milo, who's battling a severe cold. Of course, we send her our best wishes. This is also a good opportunity to provide a friendly reminder that it's chilly outside, in case you hadn't noticed, but thankfully warming up for the next 2 days. But with the lower temperatures comes flu season. Flu season is a winter event, and according to Harvard Med, flu viruses spread more readily once the air is dry and chilly. So let's wash those hands regularly throughout the day, and especially before we eat. Well, now that the holidays have ended, it's time to start budgeting for the gifts and other items we're going to buy for the next go-around. Next holiday season will be around before you know it. And that's a perfect segue into our morning's topic. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing our guest, Montgomery County Executive Isaiah Leggett, who's entering his 11th year of office. Mr. Leggett worked to strengthen the Montgomery County's biotechnology and life sciences sectors, and also established the 311 customer service as a single point of entry via phone and the internet for residents seeking county services. During Mr. Leggett's first 8 years, serious crime went down in the county by 24%, and the Fire and Rescue Services response times to Montgomery County's fires improved dramatically. Mr. Leggett was reelected to his second term in 2010 and to a third four-year term in 2014. Mr. Leggett succeeded former county executive Doug Duncan. Tonight, County Executive Leggett is holding the second of his 5 budget forums. The County Executive and the East County Citizens Advisory Board invites you to this forum to learn about the county's operating budget, to provide input on the county's operating budget priorities, and get answers to your questions. The public forum gives you, our listeners, an opportunity to tell the County Executive what's important to you as he prepares next year's operating budget for submission to the County Council. Mr. Leggett will announce his recommended fiscal year 2018 operating budget on March 15, 2017. And the Montgomery County Council will approve the operating budget at the end of May. Good morning, Mr. Leggett.
And good morning. Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
Sir, one of the most important things you do as county executive is to lead the effort to design a budget for the coming year, matching up the county's most important needs with the available resources. As mentioned, this week you began holding the first of 5 budget forums for county residents, with the second occurring this evening at 7 p.m. What have you been hearing so far, and in what areas would you like residents' feedback?
Well, first of all, let me thank many people who have come out thus far to the first session that we had, and we anticipate and believe that there will be quite a few more in the other 4 remaining budget forums. This is an annual process that I go through. This is something that prior county executives rarely ever done, but we hold 5 of them, trying to get input from our residents prior to the time that I actually make a recommendation to the county council for our budget. There are some things that are familiar, but oftentimes you hear a great deal that things that you have not properly prioritized, at least consistent with our residents. And so my efforts are to hear from the residents to determine what areas we will properly prioritize and some of the things that we deprioritize. It is important to get that feedback, because despite the fact that I've been in office now for a number of years, you always learn, and you want to make certain that you cover all the bases to ensure that the citizens' voices are in fact heard. So I'm delighted to have these forums. I think that they are productive, and based on the results that we've got thus far in terms of participation, I think that our residents eagerly anticipate participating.
That's similar to what the outgoing President Obama said. He said, no matter how long you've been in the seat, there's the bubble. And with the bubble comes a skewed reality, perception of reality. That's why it's important to get the feedback.
Oh, certainly, because again, you have advisors, you know a good deal about the budget to begin with, but you do not want to take the chance that you've excluded voices or concerns that may not normally penetrate through the typical bureaucracy.
With that feedback, have there been any surprises, any useful information that you've been able to apply?
Well, we just started the first one tonight. We have 4 more to go, and I think, yes, there are some things that are familiar. First of all, people are very concerned about education, the achievement gap that we have, class size, and some of the challenges that we face as it relates to making sure that all of our students get the kind of educational opportunities that we want them to have. There are some areas that I think are particularly important in behavior health, for example, has emerged. Addiction, for example, has emerged as a very serious concern throughout the county, as well as the challenges that we anticipate with healthcare overall. All of those areas which I think people are now greatly concerned about based on what they either know or what they perceive to be potential changes at the federal and state level.
And have you had to go back and alter what you thought would be the working solution because of the feedback you received?
Not as of yet. We have 4 more sessions to go through. We will balance this with everything else. We make a fairly considerable contribution into our behavior health programs. How we can enhance that, make it more efficient, or even place additional resources in, have not been decided at this point in time. And at the end of the process is when we make the decisions about the changes, if any, we would like to make, or how we will integrate the input into the anticipated budget process, the budget as we go through the process and listen to our residents. So I tend to try to wait until we've gone through all 5 of them before I make any decisions about any change of directions or any adjustment that we may make from last year's budget to this year's budget.
Got it. So with that, what are the main influencers, both internal and external, that drive our budget on both the spending and taxing sides of the house?
Well, externally, Montgomery County is a county. It's a large county with a budget that's now about $5.4 billion and will probably grow a little bit again this year. But we are a county, part of the state of Maryland, part of the United States. In many ways, we do not act alone. A great deal of what happens in Annapolis impacts Montgomery County. For example, the state is dealing with a budgetary shortfall, and if that shortfall is resolved in a way that requires the state to cut contributions to local communities, we are negatively impacted by that. We have a new administration coming in that may have a different view about how we view federal spending, how we look at federal employees. That would have a tremendous impact on us as well as the overall U.S. economy. Those are the external factors that we generally have to deal with, which are based on Annapolis, that is the state, in Washington, D.C., the federal government. Internally, a good deal of the job growth, the tax base, our employment base, how we deal with economic growth and development will impact the number of jobs that we'll have that impacts taxes and our spending priorities. So we try to balance both the anticipated revenue indicators that we get from the county, as well as the impact, both positive and negative, from the state and federal government.
Understood. So as I said at the opening of the show, you are entering your 11th year as county executive. Please talk a little bit about how the county was spending when you came in and how your priorities and the Great Recession changed all that.
Well, I had the unfortunate task of leadership in the time of the Great Recession, a time when the economy really, not since the Great Depression, I think, that we've seen such challenges in the entire country. Keep in mind that the stock market went down by about 6,000. The jobs were really, unemployment was fairly high. The housing industry, our auto, steel factors, infrastructure was waning in many ways. All of those things impacted us throughout the country, and certainly here in Montgomery County. There were sequestrations as it relates to federal the budget. There were changes and reductions across the board. It was a really difficult time for many jurisdictions around the country. We made some very strategic decisions to cut back on our budgets here locally. We reduced our workforce by over 10%. We cut back on many of the employees' benefits. We reduced significantly expenditures across the board. And as a result of that, we were able to weather the storm and to make certain improvements as we came out through the Great Recession.
Where did you model that solution after anything? Where did you get? How did you come to the formula that worked to pull us out of that quagmire?
Well, a combination of things. First of all, I had served on the county council for 4 terms, and I served in a leadership position both at the state and federal level. I looked for counsel from a number of people, and I made some very good hiring decisions. The person I selected as the chief administrative officer of the county was a financial wizard and had been a real staunch financial numbers guy for a number of years. He was very intelligent, ethical, and he helped to provide us with the county with the kind of blueprint and support that I needed in order to make the right recommendations. And so given my experiences, given my selection of people in key positions in finance, chief administrative officer, we were able to put together a team and working with our county council to come up with solutions that I think, although painful, were the right solutions for Montgomery County that allowed us to emerge from the Great Recession.
With this austere environment that we're in, fiscal environment that we're in, when X factors come into play, such as maybe a rise in addiction or changes in behavioral health care, how do you maintain that balance when things seemingly come out of left field?
Well, there are a number of ways in which you approach this. Everything that you do in the budget are not equal. There are some things that involve health, safety, that are crucial that you must put at the top of the list. And you have to deprioritize or reprioritize other items within the budget in order to make strategic decisions about what is important for the community. Health and safety normally are things that are at the top. Education normally is at the top. And there may be times when you spread things out over a longer period of time in order to accomplish the goal that you want. And you continue to build on that by providing program monies. You provide some way monies that will help you to plan appropriately so that when you do address some of the issues, you have not lost a great deal of time. So there are a number of techniques that you could attempt to use, but the primary one is efficiency and prioritizing those things that are most urgent to the county.
So when you prioritize it would communicate to me that maybe some people aren't going to get what they want right when they want it. And how do you communicate to them, hey, you haven't been forgotten, it's just going to take time?
Well, it's always a difficult decision because when you talk to many people throughout the county, from the standpoint of our residents, our businesses, for them, almost everything is a top priority. But it's left up to me to choose among very good priorities what I think should come first and what should come second. It's not an easy decision as to tell someone no or to delay certain things. For example, when we cut at least 10% of our employment base, there were an awful lot of people who no longer had jobs. When we decided that we would not provide cost of living adjustments, step a merit increase for our employees, there were impacts to that. But we had to explain and had to make sure that people fully understood. We were transparent with the numbers and made certain that people understood why we were doing it and the result of not doing it, that we did not address these concerns.
Thank you, sir. Folks, you've been listening to...
Understood why we were doing it and the result of not doing it, that we did not address these concerns.
Thank you, sir. Folks, you've been listening to Montgomery Mosaic on 1450 WOL. We'll be right back with Montgomery County Executive back with Montgomery Mosaic on 1450 WL. As a reminder, you can catch us on WPRS HD2 and worldwide on WOLDCnews.com. I'm Oheni Japong, your host, filling in for Ms. Deb Milo. Once again, I'm here with Montgomery County Executive, Mr. Isaiah Leggett, and we are talking about the FY 2018 operating budget. Mr. Leggett, sir, what does the next year hold in store? Will it be a tough year fiscally for Montgomery County residents and businesses?
Well, it is a challenging year. We are looking at now a potential $138 million shortfall, which is a large amount of money out of a budget of $5.4 billion. But we have to keep in mind that in the past we faced shortfalls as high as close to $1 billion, and we were able to resolve those challenges. The difficulty here is that in order to resolve a budgetary gap that is smaller, we do not have all the options readily available that we've had in the past, because we've made severe reductions. We pared our government back considerably. We've had revenue increases, and many of those approaches or techniques that we utilized in the past are no longer available for us. Although this budget shortfall is smaller, but the solutions are not as readily available as we've had in the past. I anticipate that we'll be able to resolve it, and we may have to make some cutbacks or hold some same service budgets at the level that we've had in the past, or reduce some of them. But it is a budget that I believe that would be fairly close to this year's existing budget. We are concerned, rightfully so, I think, because of the change of administration in Washington, D.C. The incoming president has indicated a different approach as it relates to federal employees. There may be less support in terms of potential raises. There may be fewer federal employees, fewer federal contracts. In a community such as Montgomery County, where we have large numbers of federal employees and federal contractors, that could have a severe impact on our tax base. So I'm uncertain as to the direction. But if some of what we've heard pans out, it could be a significant impact to Montgomery County.
Since you've assumed office, the dollar amount of the shortfalls has seen a steady decrease. How have you managed to do that? And in addition to that, how have you established what your priorities would be?
Well, first of all, it is fairly clear in Montgomery County that our top priorities are twofold. First of all, secondly, it will go to education, public safety, and helping the most vulnerable within Montgomery County. This is where I start, and hopefully where we end, and try to balance those things appropriately. This is why we have the public forum, so that people can talk about those things, to remind us how important, for example, libraries are, to remind us about environmental concern, and not to forget certain issues that have popped up in the most recent years, such as addiction and behavioral health, so that as we pull together the resources and make the right priorities for our county, all of those things are balanced in an appropriate manner. There's no scientific or empirical way in which you do this. It is a way of, the experience that we've had, the leadership team that we have around us, as well as listening to the concerns of our public and doing what I think is appropriate in terms of sound financial management.
So experience, leadership, and listening. That sounds like a pretty good algorithm for success. Sir.
Yes, it is. So sometimes you hear things that you don't want to hear, but you have to listen.
Yes. Yeah. Once you ask for opinions, you'll get them.
Yeah, in Montgomery County, you're going to get them.
Sir, the $138 million shortfall, what are the main causes of that?
Well, a number of them. First of all, what we do is to make projections about anticipated revenue. And in addition, we make projections and we build a budget based on what we've looked at a time that may be 6, 7, almost a year away, both looking forward as well as looking back. And so that if we pass a budget in July and there are additional concerns that we have to address in October or November, then we may have to add additional amounts to the budget and we go back in for supplementals. We make projections about what our tax revenues will be. For example, what does the market look like in terms of home sales? What it looks like in terms of income tax. So if there's a change on Wall Street, the stock market goes down, capital gains therefore go down, it will have a significant impact on income tax revenue for our county. And it's also based upon what is happening at the state level, whether or not there are changes that will be made as it relates to state aid. All of those things are put in that calculation. And when you have a budget of $5.3, $5.4 billion, it is sometimes you may have it a little bit high, maybe a little bit low, but You try to keep it as close to the original mark as possible, but there's no way to essentially guarantee that because you're making assumptions based on factors that can vary over a period of time.
Right. Well, you spoke to this in the answer before the last one. Given that the new presidential administration will be in place in less than 2 weeks on January 20th, what challenges do you envision fiscally for the county, and how could that impact the county as a whole, which has lots of federal institutions, businesses that sell to the feds, and lots of county residents who are federal employees?
Well, we talked about the federal impact in terms of jobs, and if you change, for example, the amounts of increases that federal employees will get, or if you change or reduce the number of employees, or even their job status, there's an impact. There are things such as the Affordable Care Act, that if you make adjustments therein, it may mean that local governments will have to pick up more of the health challenges of its residents. We had some improvements based on the ability of people to get insurance who otherwise did not have insurance prior to the Affordable Care Act. Once the Affordable Care Act went in, many of those people obtained insurance. Therefore, they relied less upon the county health clinic and the various nonprofits throughout Montgomery County that we have fund to provide health assistance to many of our residents. On the other hand, as we know, there's been a great deal of changes as it relates to behavioral health, decisions about addiction, and how the federal government will in fact help fund those. And you go through a ripple of those things, whether you're talking about public safety, police support, environmental changes and regulations. All of those things, each and every one of them could have a direct impact on local budgets based on decisions made out of Washington, D.C.
So if, as the president-elect has been touting that he's going to repeal the Affordable Care Act and put something better in place, if that repeal results in the county having to assume, local jurisdictions having to assume that loss, how have you built in the flexibility in your budget to absorb such a hit?
Well, we don't have that flexibility in the budget, and this goes back to your earlier question. When you see the changes between what we anticipated in our budgets, what we planned for, and what may change after we approve the budget. For example, we approve a budget based on the fact that the Affordable Care Act, whenever there are changes, is already in place. And if there are changes that are made and depending on those changes comes after our budget is put to rest, and we realize that there are impacts that are negative, then you may have to make adjustments in terms of supplementals or changes or reduce the health care for people who otherwise would not have health care. And that goes back again to the prioritization. How do you prioritize that? There are factors that I think that we do not directly control that impact us, but we have to make adjustments as we go forward. We can anticipate certain kinds of things that you know are fairly stable, but there are some factors as it relates to employment, the job market, housing sales, for example. All of those things can vary from one point to the other within a relatively short period of time.
What would you tell a county resident or a small business who might depend on the funding generated by federal employees spending their money here in the county? What would you tell somebody who might be worried about what the future looks like fiscally?
Well, first of all, I would ask that they talk to their congressional leadership to make sure that whatever is planned does what the president said that it will do, that it will improve on the Affordable Care Act, provide greater coverage at cheaper cost. That's easier said than done because we have not seen a plan that addresses all of those concerns. But my view would be to fight and to push and to make sure that we ensure that the people who indicated that they have a replacement for the Affordable Care Act, that they can come up with one that meets those standards. I have not seen that thus far, and so I'm a little bit skeptical whether or not they can provide a plan that addresses those concerns.
Sure. So, Mr. Leggett, despite the tough times of the past decade, the county, under your leadership, has built and opened an amazing number of new facilities. Please tell us about that. Is there one project of which you are most proud?
Well, there are a number of them. I'm most proud of a cluster of them. For example, We did a great deal in public safety to ensure that we have stations and fire stations, police stations, and locations, given the growing growth of a county that covers over 500 square miles. I'm also particularly concerned and grateful for the fact that we've been able to provide recreational centers and community centers in areas that have not been targeted at the same level throughout Montgomery County. There are probably over 50 projects, this is exclusive of schools now, that we built, and we did so in the midst of a recession. People ask, well, how do you do that? Well, one of the things we recognized was that when we were in the midst of the recession, construction costs was cheaper, and that borrowing costs was easier to get. And so we took advantage of that. Rather than to not do things, we moved forward and aggressively did them. And I think we've got some good results from that.
Well, Mr. Leggett, thank you so much for your time, and best of luck with the County Council and getting them to approve your recommended budget here in May. Listeners, that's all we have time for today. Thanks for joining us. As always, we hope you'll be back with us next month for another edition of Montgomery Mosaic on 1450 WOL, WPRS HD2, and worldwide on WOLDCnews.com. Have a great day.